Aston Martin have completely failed in Formula 1, from a team that made something out of nothing to a team known for copying others. What the heck happened here? Is it Mr. I'm extremely angry's fault, or is it bad car design, or is it just the drivers? This video is also brought to you by the lovely people at Squarespace. You see, under the reign of Lawrence Stroll, the team hasn't done awfully well. From a disappointing 2021, they chose to write off that season and focus on the new regulations coming in 2022. And we all know how that turned out. This meant they were forced to drag in their reserve driver, Nico Hülkenberg. And remember, he would have had minimal training, so he'd be like a complete rookie. And then of course they got knocked down Q1 and had a pretty disappointing race and seemed like they were backmarkers. One takeaway from the Bahrain Grand Prix though was the fact that the Mercedes power units were awful. The likes of Williams, McLaren, Aston Martin and Mercedes themselves are really off the pace. But anyway, back to Aston Martin. And let me tell you what I think the main problem is. Lawrence Stroll. Ever since he became the chairman of Aston Martin or Racing Point or Force India, whatever you want to call it, he removed their star driver who was actually able to get them points, podiums and even a win. Next thing you know, he's removing the team principal, who's pretty much carried the team throughout the past few years, and replaced him with a literal clown, Mike Crack. Who names their child this? There are also reports that Lawrence Stroll was seriously overworking the Aston Martin employees, micromanaging them and forcing them to hit unrealistic deadlines. Now we know that some of these environments work, like in Red Bull and Mercedes. We've heard that sometimes it can be horrible to work there. But remember, these guys are fighting for wins and world championships. But then there's Aston Martin, who have a similar sort of working environment, and are at the bottom of the midfield. It's like, what even is the point? You see, in my opinion, I think ever since they lost Otmar Safnauer, the team's kind of lost their underdog fighting spirit. As I said earlier, the team's always been the underdog. They've always had less money than everyone else and somehow been able to do amazingly. Now they have this big American or Canadian, whatever type of money it is, they kind of now just another rich team with another rich owner. It's just kind of boring now. It's almost as like they've lost their identity. Everyone knew Force India as the team that could create miracles out of nothing, and now they're just kind of a rich team that's not doing well. Like, Force India's car definitely wasn't meant to be finishing 4th in the standings, and yet it was. So what do Aston Martin do to become the front-running team they aspired to be? Because Aston Martin really should be a front-running team. I mean, look, they have all the facilities, all the money, and the drivers that they should be up there. The thing is though, their owner, Lawrence Stroll, wants results ASAP. I think from the moment he bought the team, he was expecting them to go up the grid. So this expectation was put on the employees, drivers and mechanics, and it hasn't gone to plan. So now Lawrence is pushing harder and harder for them to make up the lost progress. And in Formula 1, sometimes you have to take your time to build yourself up again. I mean, look at McLaren. At one point they were almost last in the standings, and then a couple years later went to P3 in the standings. It didn't take them one season, it took them a few. It takes time. In my opinion, Lawrence sort of thinks Aston Martin could be another Brawn GP, and that he can win the championship in the first season they exist. Now in my opinion, the first step they can take to become a front-running team is to bin off Lance Stroll. Now yes, the chances of this happening are extremely low, but Lance has been in Formula 1 for a while now, and he hasn't proven a lot to anyone. Yes, he's got the odd podium and obviously that pole position in Turkey, but I really thought Lance would step it up this year, but he just hasn't. But the reason I think this could be necessary is because Lawrence Stroll is a large shareholder in the Aston Martin brand. And Lawrence Stroll is a businessman, and he probably cares a lot about the brand of Aston Martin. Now obviously, if you want Aston Martin to look good, your Formula 1 team has to look good as well. So I don't think Lance Stroll's ever going to win a Grand Prix or World Drivers' Championship or nothing like that. I think if he really wants Aston Martin to move up the grid, he'll have to bin off his own son. Now before I continue, let me talk to you a little bit about Squarespace. It's the all-in-one tool to create a beautiful website. Whether you're an artist wanting to show your portfolio to the world, or create an online store to sell the next big clothing brand, or you can create an insightful but clean and sleek looking blog, Squarespace is the place for you. You don't even need to know how to code, you literally just drag and drop things and it looks so clean. So if that sounds interesting to you, head to squarespace.com using my link below, and then at checkout, use the code CarsWithConnor for 10% off your first domain name. What a deal. Then there's Sebastian Vettel, the team's 4-time world champion. Now this is a tough one, because Seb is a really talented driver, and you don't win 4 world championships if you're a bad driver. But this season, man, it's been tough. I'm not sure whether it's the bad Aston Martin car, or Seb's days are kind of coming to an end, but something's not clicking there. Although saying that, compared to Lance this year, Seb is doing really well considering the fact that he missed 2 races at the start. Like at the British Grand Prix last weekend, he actually scored points when Lance didn't, and they were both out in Q1. But I really think that it's up to Seb rather than Aston Martin. I think Aston Martin would love to keep Seb, it's just whether Seb wants to stay in a back market team. I don't know, maybe he'll retire this year, maybe he won't, we'll see. Another thing I kind of realised is the fact that the Aston Martin team is kind of following a similar path to the Jaguar F1 team. They're both are British racing teams and owned by a rich foreigner. Both teams occasionally got podiums, but not on a regular basis. Each had a Ferrari driver join them, with Irvine going there and Aston Martin having Seb. Of course, the owners seem somewhat pushy and try to meet deadlines and eventually overworking their staff. And at this rate, it seems that if Aston Martin don't get all their stuff together, they could be following a similar trajectory to the Jaguar F1 team, eventually fading into obscurity. But you know what this means? What happened after Jaguar left F1? Oh right, maybe there was another energy drink company that wanted to be in F1, and this could be their perfect gateway. William Story. Maybe this is what William Story's been talking about. Maybe William Story wants revenge on Lawrence Stroll for stealing Force India from him back in 2018 when he wanted to buy it, but because he didn't have sufficient funds to buy the team, he was ruled out. Maybe this has been William Story's plan all along. Maybe Rich Energy will eventually get to Formula 1 again. Who am I kidding? I'm just waffling at this point. Now, if Aston Martin did get rid of Lance Stroll, who would replace him? Now, it's tough because they don't have a driver academy, and yes, they do have ties with Mercedes, but I don't think they need to go for a Mercedes driver. I say this to all teams that want to be on the up. They need an experienced driver who's been in F1 for a while, so they have that backbone there to support the team. Then they also need a young rookie with some talent. Let me show you an example which is actually working out pretty well this year. The Alfa Romeo F1 team. They got a really experienced driver in Valtteri Bottas, obviously a race winner in Mercedes. Then they brought in a rookie, Zhou Guanyu. Yes, he's an Alpine Academy member, but that stuff's kind of a bit sticky now. But he's starting to find his rhythm and flow in Formula 1 and starting to get quite a few points. They've gone from being about 9th in the standings to 6th. That's quite an improvement. So I think all teams that need to build up need a similar sort of setup. And they kind of have it in Aston Martin, although Lance isn't quite the young talent we all think he is. Seb is the perfect guy to be there. Seb is perfect for Aston Martin, I'm telling you. But they need a youngster. Maybe a Felipe Drugovich, as he isn't a driver academy and he looks pretty quick. They just need stability in a good driver lineup. Yes, they have stability right now, but it's Lance Stroll. I hate to say it, but the guy is terrible. Okay, he's not terrible, he's just pretty mid. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Aston Martin and why they failed in Formula 1 and why it's all gone downhill and Now, if you have enjoyed this video, be sure to check out this video here about Carlos Sainz's odd F1 career. You know, after his win at the British Grand Prix. This video is pretty relevant, so be sure to check it out. I know you'll like it. Go on, click it right there. Be sure to like and subscribe.